You know, the Chucky series was one of the more interesting franchises for me, not just for what it managed to do in horror, but in general as the films in the series had evolved from the, I guess you can say, classier type of horror slash slasher films to becoming an edgier one with the later movies that came out many years after. And now, with the Chucky TV series coming out with the second part of its third season, I thought that now would be a time to revisit all the previous Chucky movies and catch up with the TV series later on. So for this video, I rewatched all the movies and I'm just going to talk about them a bit as a sort of look back on the franchise, and for the following video, I'll finally be able to properly catch up on the ongoing TV show. This video that we're on though, I'll just briefly be talking about the movies, kind of just going over it in generalization, as I do want to get to the series as soon as I can, so this is not going to be a definitive video on the Chucky movies overall, but it will give me something to talk about here in preparation of the show. So, Chucky movie-wise currently has 8 films in the overall franchise, the most recent one being a reboot. We're not going to go over that movie as it's not canon to the original series, and to be honest, that could be a whole other video on its own. So with that out of the way, the first 7 movies that we see here are all in chronological order, with us seeing Child's Play 1, Child's Play 2, and Child's Play 3 taking place, then being followed by The Bride of Chucky, and then The Seed of Chucky, and then finally coming ahead with The Curse of Chucky and The Cult of Chucky. Spoilers will be coming up, so if you haven't seen all or any of the movies, just be warned that we're going to go over numerous plot points that took place throughout the films, starting now. So in the first movie, Child's Play 1, that came out in 1988, we see the serial killer Charles Lee Ray being chased into a toy store where he is shot and slowly dying. So in order to keep himself living in a way, he transfers his soul over to a good guy doll, as his real life body is now laid to rest. The now possessed good guy doll gets gifted to 6-year-old Andy Barclay by his mother Karen, and the killings begin as the people around Andy start dying. Andy is then told by Chucky himself his true identity of being the infamous Charles Lee Ray, and this will come into play later as Chucky eventually gets shot by a gun, and as he goes to a voodoo instructor to ask why he is bleeding and feeling pain, the instructor reveals to him that the longer that he is in the doll, the more human he becomes, and that the only way to escape it is to transfer his soul over to the first person he revealed himself to, which was Andy, and that sets Chucky off to go on the hunt for Barclay. More adults start finding out about Chucky and his desire for Andy, and end up saving the 6-year-old by killing Chucky at the end of the movie, essentially burning him and then shooting him off into pieces. But of course, Chucky would eventually return in the second movie of the franchise in the year 1990 with Child's Play 2 by an electrical mishap that involved his remains. With Chucky alive once again, he was set to find Andy to try and take over his soul once more, but this time Andy wasn't with his mom anymore, as she had been taken away to a psychiatric hospital for her claims of the Chucky doll being alive. Andy was now being taken into foster care, and I went to a family that was also fostering a teenage girl named Kyle. As Chucky comes back for Andy, the killings begin once again, and Kyle goes on to figure out that the Chucky doll is real and goes on to try and save Andy from the killer. This leads to the ending where Andy and Kyle fight off Chucky at a Playpals factory, and has Andy coming out victorious once again as him and Kyle blow him up, and they both walk out of the factory with a stronger Chucky survivor type of a relationship with each other. The Child's Play 3 movie then comes along in the following year in 1991, but in the Chucky universe it's said 8 years after the events of the previous film. In this one we still see the Andy Barclay character having his story be continued, but it isn't by the same actor from the 2 previous movies, Alex Vincent. Instead, it is by the older actor Justin Whalen. In this movie we see Andy have to go to military school, and we also see Chucky return by a bit of his blood being mixed into the manufacturing process of another good guy doll. In this movie though, when Chucky returns to do his usual bit of killings, he decides to reveal himself to the 8-year-old Ronald Tyler to try and take over his soul now. Andy later finds out about this, and it is up to him and some of those around him that know of Chucky's truth to stop him. Chucky eventually gets defeated, this time by being thrown into a giant fan and gets ripped into shreds and pieces as Tyler comes out of everything safe, and Andy gets put into a police car to get taken to questioning. As said, this third movie came out in 1991, and we wouldn't get its next sequel up until 7 years later with The Bride of Chucky coming out in 1998. This movie will be a pretty notable shift in the franchise, as not only did they stray away from the movie title name of Child's Play, but it would also turn into this much edgier movie when compared to its predecessors. This Chucky movie was well in line with the shift of culture during that time, where things in the media had gotten much more explicit and edgier than before. The Bride of Chucky movie was a testament to that, as the sex appeal shown in Jennifer Tilly's character Tiffany was broadly shown in the movie, and of course there was also some more sex in the film, including that of the titular characters. The kills in the movie could also be seen as more brutal, and the graphics of everything were more sharp and arguably more frightening. I mean, for example, Chucky was now stitched up, and that decision to have him look like that in the movie had made him a more threatening looking character for not just the people in that Chucky universe, but also to those watching the movie at home. The movie also takes this tone of still being a horror film, but has more of a comedic approach to it, where some self-awareness is even put into the script.
For God's sake, Chucky, drag yourself into the 90s. Stabbings went out with Bundy and Dahmer. You look like Martha Stewart with that thing.
So, getting into the movie, it begins with the new character and Tiffany Valentine coming in, gathering Chucky's remaining parts, and then essentially reviving him by stitching him up and then doing the voodoo ritual to bring him back. As before all the crazy killings of the doll took place in that universe, her and Charles were lovers many years back. Chucky gets brought back to life and she shares to him that she had always thought that they were going to be married with each other for love, but then Chucky laughed at the idea and it emotionally set her off, where she then locked him up in a playpen just to mess around with him. To that she then brought a bride doll to mock him a bit even more, but Chucky, in the old Chucky way, escaped that playpen later on and then kills Tiffany so that he could transfer her soul into the doll as revenge. Tiffany, while at first obviously being pissed off at the situation, then has a talk with Chucky on how to transfer their souls into new bodies, and Chucky tells her about this magical amulet that was buried with his human body up in another state. Tiffany calls her neighbor Jesse and convinces him to take both the Chucky and Tiffany dolls to the location of the body for money, and Jesse goes on to do that with his girlfriend Jade. The pair takes the dolls on the road trip, and unbeknownst to them, the murderous dolls continue their killing spree up until they reveal themselves near the end of the movie, and Jesse and Jade use the killers' clashing personalities against each other to then have the upper hand on them. After a standoff involving the four characters, Chucky almost gets his own wish granted, up until Tiffany interrupts and literally stabs him in the back to convey that they should both be dead if they're gonna be like that. They then have a battle of the shovels where Chucky stabs her, but then both Jesse and Jade trap Chucky in his grave and finish him off there with gunshots next to his remains. At the very end of the film, Tiffany is then seen to be giving birth as a result of the sex scene of theirs earlier. The next film that followed after that one was 2004's Seed of Chucky, where this one saw the new character of Chucky and Tiffany's offspring, Glenn, also referring to themselves as Glenda sometimes, appear in the movie. The Seed of Chucky movie goes meta in that at the beginning of the film, the only doll that's really alive is Glenn, and after Glenn sees that there's a horror movie being filmed with the Chucky and Tiffany dolls, he assumes that they are his parents for the sole reason that their wrists say that they were made in Japan just like him. Oh, and to add on to the meta-ness of the Seed of Chucky movie, the universe in it shows us that Jennifer Tilly is in there as an actress in the movie that's being shot. Glenn goes to the location of where the film is being made and revives both Chucky and Tiffany, having each other meet once again with their new kid, Glenn/Glenda, right in front of them. Tiffany becomes a fan of the Jennifer Tilly actress for obvious reasons, and Chucky and Tiffany end up getting a kill almost immediately after coming alive in front of the kid. Glenda later asks why the kill if it's a bad thing, and that gets Tiffany thinking that they should stop, and Chucky tries to please them by saying that he will stop the killing, but crosses his fingers behind his back when he says so. Chucky and Tiffany still want to go back to regular bodies though, and they have a plan to get into Redman and Jennifer's bodies respectively, but first have Jennifer be impregnated / inseminated by Chucky's own semen so that she can give birth to a baby, and have Glenn's soul be transferred over to it. Chucky continues to kill, and Tiffany gets very frustrated with Redman and ends up killing him as well. Chucky and Tiffany find out about each other's killings, and then decide to have their souls transferred to Jennifer and her chauffeur's bodies. But when Chucky gets frustrated with a ton of stuff going on at once, like Jennifer having boy and girl twins, and hearing everyone else just complaining and yelling, he decides there and then that he doesn't really want to be human anymore, and would just like to be Chucky the killer doll. This brings animosity between Chucky and Tiffany, and when Tiffany is seen at the hospital with Jennifer later on, Tiffany attempts to transfer her soul over to Jennifer's body, and successfully does so, as Chucky then kills the female doll, which unfortunately now had Jennifer Tilly's soul seemingly just be transferred into it. And Glenn, seeing Chucky's psychopathic behavior, decides to end Chucky's life right there and then by chopping him up. 5 years later, Tiffany, who is now in Jennifer's body, has a birthday party for Glenn and Glenda, who evidently had the doll's soul be transferred over to them. And Tiffany, after killing the nanny, gives Glenn a present, which is revealed to be Chucky's arm that then jumps at the kid. And the movie ends there, and that one actually turned out to be the last film in the original series that was in theaters, because the next movie that came out after that was The Curse of Chucky in 2013 that went straight to DVD. This one went back to the tone of horror and strayed away from the Glenn storyline. We meet the new main character, Nika Pierce, which, fun fact, is played by Fiona Dourif, who is the daughter of Brad Dourif, the voice of Chucky, so that's pretty interesting to just kind of know it as an audience member. But we meet Nika, who has lived her life in a wheelchair, and alongside her mom as well for caring. The mom gets murdered by Chucky at the beginning of the movie, and Nika's older sister comes to the house along with her associates to grieve and talk about the future. One of the associates is the daughter Alice, who becomes the first person that Chucky tells his secret to. Pretty much everyone else in the house later on goes on to die from Chucky, except for Nika, who figures out that the killer doll is Charles Lee Ray and asks him why he's doing this, to which Chucky then reveals that it had to do with Nika's mom not wanting to be with him when they were alive in the flesh many years back, due to her already having a family and everything, but that still ticked him off. This is where he also reveals that he stabbed Nika's mom when she was pregnant with her, and that was why she was now paraplegic. Nika, after having learned about the Andy Barclay situation, starts to mock and laugh at Chucky for not being able to finish his job there, and when Nika is then accused and found guilty of the murders that took place in and around the house, she mocks him for not finishing her off either, and then gets taken to a mental asylum as people don't believe her her accusations that the Chucky doll was the cause of the murders. Then, as the movie ends, Tiffany makes an appearance in Jennifer's body from before and kills the cop. She takes the Chucky doll, melts it over to the young daughter Alice, and Chucky then possesses her body with the familiar spell. The credits roll by, and then we get our first post-credit scene in the franchise, which involved Andy Barclay himself with the same actor from the first two films, Alex Vincent, reprising his role. Andy is seen talking with his mother on the phone after he has set a received package aside, and it is shown to be Chucky. But Andy, ready for anything, had a shotgun aimed and loaded at the killer doll and shoots the gun to end off that sixth installment in the franchise. Now, one thing that I want to bring up that I found neat in this movie was that the Chucky doll at first looked newly fresh and normal, but was then revealed to have been the stitched up one that we had seen in the previous two films. But yeah, moving on to the currently last film of the original franchise, we had another direct-to-DVD movie that followed the events of the Curse of Chucky film, and this newer one came out in the year 2017 titled The Cult of Chucky, where most of it took place at the asylum that Nika was then later placed in later on. In it, everyone has still assumed that she was the one that murdered the people in the house in the previous film, but there was one person out there in the world that believed her story about Chucky, and that was Andy. The film starts off with Andy going on a date and then returning home to a Chucky head, where it is shown that he has been keeping it in the safe and torturing it for the past 4 years. Back at the mental hospital, Nika is then visited by Tiffany, who tells her that the daughter from the last movie, Alice, who got possessed by Chucky at the end, had recently died. With that, Tiffany gives Nika a good guy doll, and it turns out to be a Chucky that is also possessed by Charles. With that, it's revealed that basically Chucky has not split his soul into that other doll, so he is almost basically in multiple places at the same time. We got the original one where it's just the head at Andy's house, got the one that Tiffany dropped off at the hospital, and then also got another one that was basically brought into the hospital for therapy, and all three are/get possessed by the renowned serial killer. And as Andy figures it out after finding out about the recent killings, he goes over to the mental hospital to see what is going on. With Andy purposely attacking the hospital security guard, he gets admitted into one of the rooms and stays there for the meantime, and then another doll at around that time also gets sent into the hospital, with this one notably having short hair. He gets revived to become the third killing doll at the hospital location now, and then one of the dolls then splits their soul into Nika, and now Nika is also essentially possessed by Chucky as well. And with that, it then also gives her the ability to now walk in that body. The short-haired Chucky doll sets out to go find Andy and gets his insides ripped out by the man himself, as it was seen that it was Andy that had sent him over to the hospital with a gun on the inside, where he forcefully retrieves it from the short-haired Chucky body and shoots him with it and finishes him off by stomping on him. Nika, aka Chucky now, comes into the shot and tells Andy that if he goes on to kill him in the Nika body, that she dies too. Andy doesn't seem to mind as he pulls the trigger, but shows that he's run out of bullets, and Nika/Chucky closes the door and traps Andy in the room. Nika comes out of the hospital and meets up with Tiffany, who now knows that Chucky successfully got into her body, and they drive off, as it is also revealed that Tiffany has also split her soul into the iconic bride doll as well. So with that, the credits roll, and we yet again get another post-credit scene, this time with the original Chucky head still being at Andy's home, but we get a pleasant surprise as we see a female arrive to the house, which it is then revealed to be Kyle from the Child's Play 2 movie back in 1990. Kyle here even being once again played by the original actress Christine Elise. So that's where the film series ends for now for the original timeline. Obviously, I could have gone into much more detail with everything, with every single movie, but I just wanted to touch base real quick before heading into the TV show, as I've seen that is a continuation of the original series and has a lot of the main original cast members from the movies in it as well. So doing this video should get me well prepared for that series, and it will get me a whole lot more familiarized with the franchise overall, as I do want to see where this goes. The next video that I got, or at least what I'm planning for now, is watching the TV series up until where it is now. Apparently it's finished up its first 2 seasons and is currently done with the first half of season 3, as they're having a notable break between that current 3rd season, so I'm thinking of just catching up to there, making a video up to that, and then for the final 4 episodes run, just bunch up those final 4 episodes into its own video later on, and then basically see where they take the franchise from there. But yeah, with that now being said, this will be the end of this video of me going over the films, and by the time I have this uploaded, I would have already caught up with the TV series, so that video will come out, I don't know, maybe like a week after this one comes out, and then like I said, a 3rd and final video will come out later that just goes over the last 4 episodes of season 3. And yeah, that'll be the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in another one.